scene is the Mediterranean island of Majorca, late in the year 1838. Chopin had decided to leave Paris and travel to Majorca with the woman he had fallen in love with, the famous novelist universally known as George Sand. Chopin and Sand were accompanied by her two children, Maurice and Solange. The vacation began with beautiful weather, and Chopin wrote of the turquoise sky, emerald green hills, the heavenly air, the marvelous Mediterranean idyllic life. Then the rains came, and the idyll turned into a disaster. The word spread that Chopin had consumption, tuberculosis. Fearing exposure to the disease, the locals forced Chopin, Georges Sand, and her children to leave the villa in which they had been staying and to move into an abandoned monastery. The monastery cells were cold and damp, and Chopin's health began to seriously deteriorate. Despite his suffering, Chopin was working to complete his prelude, Opus 28, on an upright piano that had been moved into the Charterhouse, as the monastery was called. Georges Sand, having left Chopin by himself, returns late one night. She hears Chopin playing the piano and finds him weeping when she enters the room. He is playing the piece he has just composed, the D-flat Prelude. Startled, he arises from the piano and cries out, "I thought you were dead!" Chopin had had a premonition of disaster befalling Sand, and a semi-unconscious hallucination that he himself had died. In his dream state, he had seen himself floating on a lake, heavy drops of cold water dripping on his chest. Sand tries to reassure the distraught Chopin. The drops of water in his dream, she suggests, had come from the sound of the raindrops on the roof of the monastery. Chopin had unconsciously imitated the raindrops in the constant repetition of the same note in his prelude. Chopin grows angry and denies that such a childish imitation of nature, mimetic harmony, could ever be part of his composition. But Sand, in a beautiful passage, writes, "The music did indeed echo the sound of the water drops falling on the tiles of the roof, but in his imagination and in his prelude, the raindrops had been rendered by tears falling from heaven on his heart."